everyone, here we are this afternoon with Pep, and we're going to be talking about commercial conversions. So my name is Dan Eaton. I'm the commercial conversion lead trainer here for Progressive, and just want to talk about commercial conversions and what's happening with Pep and what he's been up to. So Pep, do you want to introduce yourself to everyone in the community? What have you been up to? Where did you come from? Let's talk about your school life. Let's go for it. Who's Pep?
Let's go all the way to the beginning, eh? Okay, yeah, me in a nutshell. I'm Australian, if you probably haven't figured out from my accent. I actually started off as a chartered accountant, trained as a chartered accountant, and yeah, moved into banking, moved into risk. But I've kind of always been in the property side of things. I bought my first property at the age of about 24. Had a bit of a break in between. And then, yeah, I got aggressively back into property about 5, 6, 7 years ago, and loving it. So I did a lot of developments back home in Australia, but they were from the ground up. And yeah, at the moment, looking to explore this commercial to resi. I think that's the buzz going around at the moment. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell. Let me know if you want more info.
Yeah, cool. Well, yeah, we can dig into a bit of that, I'm sure, as we go through. So ultimately, they were, as like you say, getting back into property sort of five or so years ago. What sort of property strategy were you doing? Where were you in terms of your property journey at that point?
So simple buy-to-lets, really. Mm-hmm. And then I really enjoyed the buy-to-let because a lot of the buy-to-let stuff was not exactly new, but new. So if you bought it new, I mean, you'd obviously pay a bit of a premium, but then if it's near new, well, you don't have to pay the premium, and you'd also get the opportunity to assess which markets were the best to get your buy-to-lets. Shortly after that, I discovered build to own and build to rent, where I can create value by building something. It's like a house that you can split, or building a duplex is what we call them. I think you guys call it townhouses here. Is that right?
Townhouses, yeah.
And even though you'd buy the piece of land and then you build on top, you only pay stamp duty for the piece of land, which you get value straight away because you don't have to pay it on the whole purchase price. I thought that was pretty neat and handy. The other thing is when you split the title, you basically get a reval, and obviously each one of those units within your property are actually worth a lot more. So it's a way of creating value, and creating something out of a piece of land, which is what I enjoyed. So
I love that as well, about the concept of creating value, and basically, the easy way to do some of that, as you said there, is taking something that's currently one thing and then dividing it into more, and then title splitting and creating more units, which is in some ways, I suppose, exactly why commercial conversions fit in that, because we're taking a building, which might be one thing, and then carving it up and then splitting up the titles into making more and more residential dwellings. So it's quite interesting to hear you say that, because I think you were thinking about doing commercial conversions before you actually thought about doing commercial conversions, because the concepts are very similar. So how did you get into doing commercial conversions then? What led you through the doors at Progressive Property to do the commercial conversion course?
Yeah, it's a very good question. Very good question. I had a friend that I used to play volleyball with, actually, and I didn't even know, because he's a very unassuming guy. But when we got to the bar and to the pub, we just started chatting about what he does, outside of work. And it turns out he's a property guy, and I didn't think anything of it until he told me about his portfolio, and then I'd really turned my attention. So yeah, he's got about 16, 18, 19, 20 properties, and I thought, well, that's pretty good. That's pretty handy. I'm quite inspired and quite impressed, because I've always wanted to get into a bit more property in the UK. So yeah, had a bit of chat about him, and he suggested that I come onto a Progressive Property with Soppy, and I thought, oh, okay, another one of those events.
Okay, yeah. So the 3-day multiple streams, yeah.
Yeah. It's really good. When I finally got there, I was just kind of blown away about all these strategies, because a lot of them we don't have in Australia.
Yeah.
We have things like HMO, but we don't specifically call it HMO. It's just a matter of somebody going out and renting a property and then getting one of their mates to rent out a room. So technically, if you expand that on, you can become a HMO depending on how many bedrooms you've got in the place. So yeah, and yeah, I was just going through, and I think at the time I wanted to do SA because I was really keen on SA in terms of the cash flow.
Yeah.
But what really struck me is I think it was Jamie York when he got on stage and he started talking about commercial conversions.
Yes.
And he said something that resonates with me. And he said, "Who wants some chunky cash?" And I said, yeah, for the effort that you put into BTL, the same effort that you put into commercial conversions, I think it's more rewarding doing the commercial conversions. So that's how I got into commercial conversions, signed up, and then the pandemic hit, and then the course got delayed for a few months, and finally, what was it, September last year?
Was it August, September?
September, yeah, got on board, and never looked back. It's really good. Love it.
Oh, cool. So I really like the fact that they're saying about the chunky cash, but also the amount of effort that you put into buy-to-lets or other property strategies. And ultimately, commercial conversions is an acquisition strategy. It's about buying a property and then converting it into something. Now, whether or not you use that as single lets, service accommodation, HMOs, or like you said, sell it for that chunky cash and get those chunky cashes in. It can do all of those things.
Yeah.
So you came along to the course in, like I say, August, September last year. So here we are, 6 months later on. So what are you up to now? What are you doing at the moment? What are you working on?
Working on a few deals, one in particular in Kent. I do notice the process of acquiring a property goes through a lot of due diligence, as would a normal single buy to let, but I think I enjoy going through the planning stages of analysing a particular deal to see if it works, see if we can convert something into another thing, depending on the use class, etc.
Yeah.
So there's one that we're looking at in Kent. It's about an 8,000 square foot building office, really easy floor plate. And at the moment, you can convert it directly from an office into C3, basically into flats.
Yes.
Now, I'm also toying with the idea of putting another story on top. Creating more value.
More value.
So I'll have to speak to the consultant about the planning consultant, because there might be provisions within the new GDPO Act that will let you put another story or two on top, depending on certain other conditions. But I think that's kind of a grey area until the new laws come out in August, September this year. So we're still kind of in a consultation phase with the planner about that. So that's one, and then looking at a few more in Berkshire. Basically keeping really, really busy. Speaking to agents this morning with a couple of deals. So getting more information, learning through the whole process, really.
Fantastic. And there's a couple of things you mentioned there, which we'll just elaborate on for the people watching. So you mentioned about using permitted development to convert it from an office to residential. And actually, we're talking quite excitedly in some ways about the new permitted development order that's going to be coming in. So for those who are watching, at the moment, currently, you can convert an office into residential, depending on some criteria, but you can do that without the need for planning permission. But what Pep's talking about there is there's going to be a new permitted development order coming out, which will hopefully bring, or we're very expecting that it will, bring more powers that we are, as developers, we can convert offices into residential, potentially adding stories on, as Pep said there, about adding a story on top. So quite exciting time to be involved in commercial. I find it exciting to be involved in commercial conversions anyway, but I can see how I might be slightly biased. But so you're working on that. You've had some deals. So people watching this, some people might say, well, actually, we're just talking about all the good things, and no one's talking about the bad stuff. So Pep, talk us through a deal that hasn't gone through. One of the ones that you looked at and actually didn't do in the end as a result of various aspects of the deal. Let's talk about it was a pub, I think, wasn't it? It was a pub with
yeah. That's an interesting one, actually. I think the deal came on our laps on Thursday. Had a big chat with the agents on a Friday. Had to get some numbers in and an offer by basically Monday or Tuesday. We got it all done. It was a lot of hard work. I think we must have worked about 8 hours straight on that. So basically, it was an old pub that needed to be knocked down, and it had planning permission for 8 flats. But because the pub originally is a community asset, whoever's going to build and develop on that particular piece of land would still have to have a pub on the ground floor in the basement, which means the use class would still have to be A4. You can't change that. Well, not soon anyway. But a touch of the planning permissions, there was a lot of variables, let's say, and with these variables related to conditions that the council, when they granted the planning permission, that they had to mark off, such as excavation works, etc., etc. It had to meet certain conditions and standards. So that was one obstacle. The other obstacle is the valuation of the commercial space. Now there's 2 ways of valuing commercial space. One of them would be that the amount of rent that the tenant will pay, and you apply a factor on top of that. But because there's no tenants in there, that was going to be very difficult. The other one is price per square foot. And we certainly had a lot of differences in what we thought the prices per square foot for that commercial space would be, and the particular agent. So we politely refused and say, look, we're not going to go with this deal. But when we said that, I drafted in the email we're not going to go through this deal. However, if you want somebody else that wants to go through this deal, you pretty much need that buyer to basically buy it in cash, because I know that when you look at the numbers and you present this to your broker, there's no way a lender would actually lend based on those numbers, because then obviously the lender will do their due diligence as well. And the good thing about commercial conversions or any other type of development is that there's almost more transparency in it, because there's more scrutiny involved in the numbers.
Yeah.
And sadly, it's one that we didn't do, but at that same time, we were kind of glad that we had to stick with our numbers and just kind of move on.
Yeah, so true, isn't it? It's really easy in some ways to become a motivated buyer and start changing numbers, and I see so many people get in trouble doing that because they're far too optimistic in what it's going to be. And like you say, if you've got a commercial unit that at the end of it is going to be commercial space because that's part of the development, and you can't put a value on it, then the banks aren't going to value it either, and therefore that's going to potentially leave you with a bit of a problem. So it's really good to hear that, and I wanted to bring that out so that people could hear that there's certain things that you need to consider when doing a deal, and actually not every deal is a deal, and actually it's okay to walk away. So you did the deals, you did the numbers there, you did the process, and the answer was no. Therefore, you walked away with it, and I think that's absolutely fantastic that you did. So well done that one. And also now you've obviously got a bit more experience in the bank about with the next deal, with working with that agent or working with the process and going through it. So yeah, really good to see. So you've got a couple of deals that you're working on at the moment. You've got some things that are coming through from agents. But I hear quite a lot of the time people say things like they can't find deals or they can't do commercial conversions because there's nothing in the market, or there's too expensive, or they can't find the funds. But you're doing this now. You're 6 months from the course. You're looking at doing commercial conversions. So what would you say to those types of people who are saying I can't do it because there isn't anything in the market or it costs too much money? What would you say to those?
I'd say before you say you can't do it, verify that you can't do it. Seriously, because I was looking at doing single lets with SAs and so forth. And given it takes the same amount of effort to go look at a residential property as a commercial property, I'd say that for me anyway, it's much easier because there's not so many participants that I've got to compete with. It's not that Saturday run where you ring the agents up and say, "Oh, can I see this residential property on a Saturday morning?" And when you get there, there's probably another 5 parties interested. And whereas commercial agents, they don't have as many parties going for that one particular property. Hence, I feel that also that if I show the agent the numbers, they kind of agree or not agree. Whereas in residential, it's like they're always going to say, "Oh, this is worth more than that. Oh, we've got a better offer. We've got a better offer," and yada yada yada.
Yes. Yeah, I do like that, the difference between. I think that's actually one of the reasons why I really got into commercial quite early on. Was I went to view a commercial conversion, and when I was doing the comparables for what we were going to convert into flats and what we were going to sell them for, as part of that due diligence, I came across a property that was just down the road that was coming up for sale, and it was basically it looked like it had been a repossessed house, or it had gone wrong in terms of someone trying to extend it, and they'd gone wrong somehow. So it was basically a flip. Basically, it was a 3-bed semi that was going to be a flip, and it wasn't my strategy. So I handed it off to a friend of mine who was doing flips in the area. And I passed it off to her, and she gave me a ring back, said, I've just spoken to the agent. They're waiting to get the keys, and there are 32 people waiting to view it as soon as they got the keys. Whereas the commercial property that I was viewing, I was only the second person to view it. So there was 2 people viewing the commercial and 32 viewing the residential. So I think that's when I really made my mind up that this is where I want to play in the market. So it sounds like you've had a similar experience there.
Yeah, pretty much. And also I think with the agents, I don't know, the commercial agents are generally more knowledgeable for whatever reason. Like that, I find that they're more helpful, and I find that I've last 6 months I've just built good relationships with agents, and they don't treat you like a dummy, basically, as long as you know what you're talking about. But like we saw one last Wednesday. And he was all over it, and I said, "Yep, I know these are my ideas. What do you think? Yada yada yada." And you took him through the whole plan, and he had all the time in the world for me. And we're going to catch up again this week just to go through the numbers again. So I find that they're much more helpful. He wants to get the deal over the line, seriously. Yeah. So as opposed to just residential where it's just, oh no, these other buyers offering more, and then they'll play each buyer against each other.
Yeah. So we're not bashing estate agents here. If there are any
no, absolutely not. I love estate agents.
We do love estate agents, but we love commercial agents as well.
Yeah.
Good, cool. So, what does the future hold for you, Pep? Where are you going with this? What are you going to be doing? In 5 years' time, where's Pep?
Okay, so so the plan is to get the commercial conversions underway. We're planning to do 2 by the end of the year. Now I've got a full-time job as well, but it also feels like I'm doing probably full-time because I enjoy it. But no, it's absolutely fine. So we'll try and get 2 done under our belt by the end of the year. And after that, we'll look at more exotic stuff like properties that need planning permission, for example.
Yeah. Okay.
So 5 years time, we would have like at least say a handful to 10, given the fact that I know we can accelerate it a bit more, but I kind of enjoy my day job at the moment. I still want to stick into my day job, but it would be nice to say, hey, look, I can quit my day job after about a couple of years. And to be honest, all the deals that we've had a look at could have easily quit our day jobs after a year or have the choice to. But I think it's my choice to stick in a job and do property on the side. That could change. You never know.
Yeah.
You never know.
It must be quite nice to have that choice to be planning to choose when you want to do whether you want to work or not. That sounds quite good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, cool. So so you're doing some property stuff. You're going to the training. You're off. You're looking at these deals now. So we've got some potential deals. So some of those deals, I mean, are they going to be like rentals? Are you going to sell them for the chunky cash? What's the sort of plan around that?
It depends. I have to look at the product at the end first. I always start with the end in mind, let's say. So using that example that we had a chat about the pub, that was a place in central London. So given the fact that central London's always going to be a marketable place, it's always going to be a rentable place. It's because London's quite transient. People do come, people do go. The 8 flats on top, we would have just kept those, basically keep the whole freehold. For that reason, we wouldn't be able to split the titles and sell those flats because 4 of those flats were studios and they were about 27 square meters. Right. And then there's a new law that's coming in April whereby any new permitted developments office to resi class so need to be larger than 37 square meters. In terms of base standards, yeah. But also because it was 27 square meters, I think what the lenders say is like you couldn't even sell them because the minimum you need to sell these properties is 30 square meters. So we would have kept those ones definitely. The one in Kent that we're currently analysing, it's definitely one for sale. Because it's a place where people want to live, buy, but also in the planning portals, we've analysed a lot of the properties alongside the street within about a quarter-mile radius, actually within about 100-metre radius. So there are developers in there already, and that have put planning applications in on vacant blocks of land to build high-rises there.
Oh, right.
Yeah, so like if people with a lot more money than us, other developers, are putting their money down and developing other properties there, you're kind of onto it. It's almost like it's almost like back betting in a game of roulette or in a game of blackjack. You trust the person that's doing it. You might as well.
Well, there's something in that, isn't it? Not so much gambling, but if you are wanting to do something, one of the best ways I find to do it is to find the people who are doing it and follow what they're doing. So exactly what you're saying there is, there's a lot of money being pumped into the area. Therefore, you're gonna get on the back of that guy.
That's a much more sensible analogy.
We don't do gambling in commercial conversions. We work on certainty. We don't do gambling.
Exactly.
So, cool. Great stuff. So what would you say to anyone who was thinking about getting involved in commercial conversions?
Absolutely. Yeah. Give it a try. Do a lot of research, I'd say. Because if you're not sure about what strategy that you wanted to do, like I had at the very beginning, try and get at least a general idea of what each of the strategies are. Because I started off with wanting to do essays and I spent quite a fair bit of time in my goldmine area. But then obviously when I discovered commercial conversion and the certainty behind it, given the fact that, it's permitted development, you get prior approval from the council, I found that it's such an easier way than planning, going through the planning permission way. So get an understanding if, do your buy-to-let studies, do your SA studies, HMO studies, definitely do your commercial conversion studies and, see what resonates with you and see what you want, whether it's cash flow or if it's, capital, equity, yeah, chunky cash, yeah, completely up to you. So, but definitely, I recommend it. I haven't looked back, to be honest.
Good. Well, Pep, I mean, it's absolutely wonderful talking to you this morning. So thank you very much for your time. If people want to get hold of you, are you okay if they message you on Facebook or?
Yeah,
or,
absolutely.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, I'm in the group, so yeah.
Brilliant.
So,
lovely. So if anyone wants to know more about commercial conversions or Pep's deals in particular, just feel free to just drop him an instant message. If you've got any questions that you want answering on some of the things we've covered, put those in the comments below as well, and we'll answer them as we come through. But yeah, it's been absolutely great to talk to you this morning, Pep. So thank you very much for your time, and we'll say goodbye to everyone in the community. So goodbye, everyone in the community from me.
See you guys. See you, everybody. Thanks, Dan.
Thanks very much. Thanks so much, everyone.
Cheers.